This is Aaron's project and I'm the assistant. His custom design fits a specific place in his home and it will display his Lego creations. From bottom to top you can see what a handsome display case project this is. It could just as easily be a bookcase by adding extra shelving. Before heading to the big box store, he estimated the materials needed by drawing a 3D model on his tablet. First order of business, break down the sheet goods. Layout lines are drawn where the center shelf dado needs to go. Hardboard strips clamped in place guide the router as Aaron moves from one side forward and the other side back. Off camera, the same process is used for the bottom shelf dado. The two sides are now separated. A second pass removes the factory edge. This pass gives us our top, center, and bottom material. Using a crosscut sled, Aaron now cuts the pieces to length. The saw is now set up with a stacked dado set and an auxiliary fence. Each side and bottom piece receives a rabbet to accept the back panel. Holes are now pre-drilled for the assembly screws. Glue is applied to each dado and the center shelf is placed into position. Note the plywood and paper shims assisting with the height alignment, maintaining a flush joint. You can see that the bottom has been dry fitted and secured with right angle clamp blocks before screwing in the center shelf. The lower screws will hold the joint secure while the clamp is removed, giving access for remaining screws. Clamp blocks have been moved to the middle and it's time to glue and screw the bottom. Shelf pin holes are drilled using a jig clamped against the center shelf. This ensures perfect alignment. Ripping the back is next, making two passes to center the beadboard pattern. After cross-cutting to length, the back is installed with glue and nails. We begin fitting the side panel trim by ripping and cross-cutting solid oak stock. Applying ample clamp pressure, the front trim piece is glued into place. Aaron will cut 3 cross pieces. The first cut is made a shade long, flipped, and placed against the stop block for a final cut. Layout for cross-piece locations was done off camera. Glue is applied before carefully lining up the parts. The back trim piece is next, and then we begin the dance of 1,000 clamps. Please consider subscribing to our channel. We'd love to read your comments. The face frame style will cover the plywood case and the side trim. The fence is set so that the width will accommodate 2 flutes. Aaron consults his design on the tablet and then marks the beginning and end points for fluting. Stop blocks are clamped into position. The router is fitted with a cove bit and plunged to full depth. I don't think Aaron took another breath until he reached the end. The face frame stiles are positioned and clamped without glue. The face frame middle rail is cut and checked for fit. The face frame bottom rail was a bit long on the first cut. One final trim and it fits right into place. These 2 rails are then glued, clamped into place, and left to dry while we begin working on the top arched rail. The top rail features an arched cutout that flows from one side stile to the other, and a relief shadow line effect near the top. Aaron begins by gluing up smaller pieces, reducing waste when cutting the circled shape. In order to use the circle cutting jig, Aaron's going to need to cut a backer board for the project material. Double-sided tape is used to attach the glued-up blank to the backer board. The assembly is now trimmed to fit between the 2 stiles, which have been temporarily clamped into position. It's crucial that Aaron finds the exact center line and places a 1/8 inch hole for the pivot pin. Work begins on a router template out of 1/2 inch plywood by using the circle cutting jig and cutting the arch. Aaron will then take the arch to the cabinet and test fit for accuracy. The shadow line areas are marked on both sides of the template blank and then cut out at the bandsaw. The finished template is now taped and clamped to the workpiece, and a router is used to cut the relief shadow line areas. And now the project blank is ready for the final cut at the bandsaw, once again using the circle cutting jig. And that's it, a perfect fit. To finish the face frame, fluted stiles and the arched rail are glued and aligned tightly to the other rails. Once again, we perform the dance of 1,000 clamps. The plywood top is glued and clamped into position. Sanding the face frame where molding will be attached. A roundover bit is set up on the router table. The pieces run through on one edge only. Aaron makes sure the finished profile is uniform along its entire length. The table saw blade is set to 45 degrees. The first piece of molding is mitered on one end, leaving the other end a little long. The next piece is mitered and held together at the joint, while the next cut line is marked on the other end. This piece is checked and recut until it fits perfectly. The last piece is mitered, test fitted, and now it's time to mark the two side pieces for length. The saw blade is reset to 90 degrees. Finishing cuts are made on the crosscut sled. Once all three pieces line up, it's time to apply glue and clamp. In our build, we allowed the front piece to set up overnight before moving on to the side pieces. Off camera, the same steps were repeated for the bottom mitered moldings. Earlier, Aaron used the router table with a roundover bit to soften two adjacent edges of oak strip molding. It's easier to hand sand now rather than later. Each piece of strip molding is mitered to fit and then glued and clamped until set. The same cut, fit, recut process is followed for cove moldings. Note the simple jig made from scrap material for easy mitering on the table saw. It was during this build that Aaron decided the shop really needed a compound miter saw. Once all four pieces fit, glue is applied, and a section of doweling helps the clamp center the pressure. And this completes the look that Aaron designed for the case sides. The rough cut shelf pieces are now trimmed to fit the actual case opening. Shelf pins are added, shelves are centered with folded paper shims before the glue is applied. Tape holds the edge molding in place, and then each shelf assembly is clamped until the glue sets. All surfaces and joints are sanded in progressions of paper up to 220 grit before the Danish oil finish is applied using lint-free disposable towels. Multiple coats of finish were applied until the desired depth of color is reached and the display case is completed. The finished display case being loaded for the drive to Aaron's home. You may have noticed this project occurred at the same time as we prepared to move from this house to our new home in another city, only days later. If you've enjoyed this project, please consider subscribing to our channel and exploring our other projects. We'd love to read your comments, and be sure to click on the bell for notifications on future uploads. Until next time, be an early riser. Get up, get going, have fun, and stay safe.